Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning?
I've never seen somebody set their career on fire so quickly. Up first, we do have to talk about the fires that are devastating LA and the surrounding area right now. Some of the footage and images I'm seeing are just heartbreaking. So if you're in this audience and you're in this community and you're going through that, my heart goes out to you. And even if you're not, just anybody out there, this is a real tragedy, and I'm honestly heartbroken for y'all and hoping you get all the support you need to recover. And I'm always very hesitant to politicize tragedies or natural disasters, but I think it's absolutely fair game to actually critique the way that elected officials are responding to events unfolding in their own area that they're supposed to be responsible for. So we are going to talk about the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, a former congresswoman who was actually, if I recall correctly, considered to be and almost named Biden's vice president before he went with Kamala Harris instead, because, oh boy, I mean, I'm not sure I've ever seen a politician fall on their face this hard during a moment of crisis before. The first thing is that she was apparently out of the country on a taxpayer-funded diplomatic mission to Ghana while all this was going on. Take a listen to some reporting from the New York Post.
Los Angeles residents are furious as wildfires engulf their city, turning it into an apocalyptic nightmare, while Mayor Karen Bass was thousands of miles away in Africa. Bass, who was attending the inauguration of Ghana's president as part of a Biden administration delegation, faced harsh criticism online. Bass's office announced she was en route back to LA as criticism intensified. But many residents, including conservative commentator Ashley Hayek, were outraged, calling it insane that the mayor was on a taxpayer-funded trip while their city burned. Bass, who took office in 2022, now faces mounting pressure to address the crisis and her controversial absence during one of LA's most harrowing moments.
Now, she did come back, I guess, better late than never, but I thought this was super bizarre on a couple of levels. Because first, why is a mayor of a city in America going to Africa on diplomatic missions? And why is taxpayers being forced to fund that? That to me makes no sense. Like, do your job that you were elected to do. Don't go play diplomat. That's what diplomats and the State Department are for. Very strange stuff to me. But two, they knew they were going to have fires. Like, this did not catch them totally by surprise. They had forewarning. So why on earth, even if all you cared was optics and you don't actually care about your constituents, why wouldn't you come back? Wouldn't you foresee that it's not going to go over well, that you're abroad on some ridiculous trip funded by taxpayers while your city is literally burning? Then she did come back, but too late, and it only got worse from there, as we'll get into. But to me, it's just like, seriously? And then what makes it so much worse is that, of course, there's receipts for everything, y'all. Whenever I see some Delulu stuff going on, I always know somebody on Twitter is going to find the receipts on them. Remember that thing a few years ago where Texas was being hit by a natural disaster, but Senator Ted Cruz, the Republican, went to Cancun during it? Yeah, he got a ton of flack for that. And somewhat rightly so, it was optically a bad look. But as a senator, I mean, he's not directly responsible. He's not a governor, a mayor, somebody who's actually running things on the ground in the state. So there's only so much he could have even done, but he shouldn't have gone. It was a terrible look. He should have stayed around and helped, of course. But guess what Karen Bass had to say about that at the time? She tweeted, "Ted Cruz fleeing Texas in the middle of a deadly crisis is part of a larger pattern of the GOP abandoning folks in crisis. We need to build a movement to kick them all out." Ooh, that one aged like milk, Karen. There's also just a real competency crisis on display here. I mean, listen to this clip of Karen Bass speaking during the crisis now that she's back from Ghana.
Right now, if you need help, emergency information, resources, and shelter is available. All of this can be found at URL. Los Angeles, together is how we will get through this. Through the heroism of our firefighters.
Bruh, she just read URL, like she was supposed to read the correct URL. And new pronunciation of heroism just dropped. I mean, look, it's not the end of the world. It's just a minor verbal tick. But when you combine it with everything, it looks like a clown show over there right now during a real devastating crisis. Then there's this clip from Sky News doing the round where Karen Bass was asked about all these controversies and just no comment.
Madam Mayor, David Blevins from Sky News in the UK.
I'm not going to.
We're fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that? Have you no response to that? Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home?
I mean, yikes. This is not a good look. And I remember Biden almost made this woman the vice president of the United States. These are very valid questions. I don't know the answers to all of this. I'm not familiar intimately with the details of how LA's municipal government is run, but these all seem like pretty valid questions. And it is notable to me that the person who ended up asking her all these tough questions was a reporter from Sky News in the UK, which it tells you something. They have correspondents over here that cover American stuff, of course, but it's like the local journalists or the mainstream media here don't often have that same kind of energy of just asking tough questions of Democratic elected officials. Once in a while they do, but it did not surprise me to see that the person who actually went hard on Karen Bass like this and asked her the questions she should be asked and then published her very telling non-response wasn't a member of the American corporate press. I think that's telling, honestly. But even many liberals and progressives are admitting that Karen Bass has mangled the optics and rollout of her response to this tragedy. Emily Hoven, a writer for the very left-leaning San Francisco Chronicle, published a piece criticizing Karen Bass and wrote, LA Mayor Karen Bass has finally returned from a trip to Ghana, but it's concerning she went at all and didn't return sooner, giving forecasts of severe fire danger. It's a surprising concept, but local leaders are elected to lead locally. Now, it does take a very long time to travel back from Ghana to California, but the article pointed out that Mayor Bass, there were projections that there were going to be serious weather events and fires potentially breaking out in her city. So she could have potentially decided to not go on the trip. I think they would have survived without her somehow, or headed back days ago when she saw this coming. But she didn't until I guess she felt forced to return because the situation got so bad. I just think it's telling that even somewhere like the San Francisco Chronicle, which certainly skews liberal, can see that this is a major drop the ball moment for Karen Bass here. Ultimately, there's nothing Karen Bass could have done to avert this tragedy, and any changes she could have made probably would have only marginally impacted the city's ability to respond. But I think we are witnessing a real fall from grace and an absolute masterclass in how not to communicate or operate from an optical and strategic perspective as an elected official.